Widgery from mattwidgery.com. In today's episode, we're going to be continuing this exciting journey from DSLR to mirrorless. And as I said in the previous video, where I started looking at some of the legacy lenses and manual lenses that you can use on your mirrorless camera, like the Fuji X Pro one that I have here, to broaden the range of lenses that are available. Because currently, at the moment, for the Fuji, there are a few lenses, and there's more being bought on stream all the time. But as it stands at the moment, there aren't so many lenses available for this, and there are some gaps. So the challenge is to find some lenses that will fill those gaps and make the setup as easy and convenient to use as my DSLRs. In fact, of course, the idea is to make it easier and more convenient to use than the DSLRs, because they'll be smaller and lighter and all that sort of stuff. So that segue brings me on very neatly, if I do say so myself, to this little unit here. Now, I showed you one of these in the last episode. This is an adapter that takes one set of one lens mount and puts it onto another, so you can use lenses from one type of camera system and use them on a different one. So in the one I showed you the other day, that on this side had an M42 mount, which you could screw lenses into, and then on the back side it was the X mount that the Fuji system used. And of course, being a Nikon guy, the next one that I wanted to get was this little character here. This takes the Nikon F mount and converts it to Fuji X. So what you do, and this is the reason I got it, really. This is the 80 to 200 2.8 professional workhorse. So this was built in about 1989, this lens. It's all metal construction. It is just a gorgeous, gorgeous lens. I mean, it's incredibly sharp, even by today's standards. It is really a gold standard lens. It is incredibly sharp, and it's something that I use a hell of a lot on the D300. And, of course, this is what I was saying in the last video, that I wanted something more on the telly end that would give me, professional grade pictures, because I've tried before. I don't think I've got one inside, but if you link up to the last video, have a look just there where my hand is and click on the Legacy Lenses video there. Have a look at the 80 to 200 variable aperture Practicar M thingy, whatever it was that I had in that, which, although was much, much smaller, in fact, it was smaller than my Galaxy Note 2 telephone, the images weren't so great. This is the other side of the coin. This has incredibly good images, but of course it is big. So what you do, you mount this in the same way as you would onto your Nikon camera. There's a little dot that you line up, and theoretically you line those up, and then it, there we go, clicks into place. So you can then put the lens cap back on the end. Of course, it's a Fuji lens cap, not a Nikon one now, and keep that in your bag as is. And then when it's ready to use, you can take the end cap off and mount it just in the same way as you would if it was a normal Fuji lens. So if we do that on this one, and I'll just take that off a second, we can mount this onto here, and this is what you end up with. It's a bit of a beast, as you can see. I have tried this, and the initial image quality off them is phenomenal. I mean, as you would expect. In fact, this is better than it was on the D300, because it's a newer sensor, it's higher resolution, it doesn't have an AA filter, it's got a more modern processor in it, and so, this lens was always out-resolving what the camera body could do on the D300, and so it's probably out-resolving what this can do as well, in fairness. But it's a sharp an image I've ever seen off this camera at that telly end. Certainly it is incredible, and it's professional grade. There's no doubt about it that the pictures that you get off here are up to par. That's absolutely not in question. However, of course, you are losing some of the reason for having the smaller cameras, because it's still a big weight to carry around. Yeah, of course, as a combination, it's lighter still than this plus the D300, so it wins there. But the other thing to note is that, all the weight is in this lens. A lot of the weight is forward of where that mount is, and you really do not want to be holding this just by the camera, because you will put a lot of force on that mount, and the likelihood is that you will warp the mount or even potentially rip it out. And that's that's not saying anything bad about the Fuji mount or anything like that. It's simply, what happens if you have a big lens. You need to be holding it via there. It's why if you look at a lot of these lenses, they have a collar that goes around there with a little hot shoe mount there, so that when it's sitting on a hot shoe, it's supported by the weight rather than by the shoe underneath, so that the weight is actually being supported by the lens. So that's something to bear in mind. If you're holding this and you've got it around your neck, for example, don't just let the camera drop and have the strap lug supporting the camera and then the whole weight of the lens dangling off it. It will be very bad for it, and you'll probably end up damaging your camera. While I am completely happy with this as a system, I am still on the hunt for something that's smaller and lighter, because it's huge. To be honest, it's something where if I was taking it out for a job and I needed to use it, obviously then I would, but I still am looking for this ultimate perfect system where I can pare everything down and make it smaller. So that's that. Now, there's a couple of things also to bear in mind when using this type of lens mount from Nikon, and presumably it's the same with the Canon mounts as well, although I'm not familiar with those, so please don't quote me on it. But certainly when it comes to the Nikon stuff, Nikon in these days, this was 1989, bear in mind this was designed originally for a film camera, and it was all, designed for everything to be sort of operated in, as things were in those days, as a manual aperture ring around the lens. On the more modern lenses, like, for example, the 17 to 50 that I'm recording this on now, on the D50-100, there is no aperture ring on there. It's all done fly-by-wire, and the only way of changing the aperture inside that lens is electronically through scroll wheels on the back of the camera. And that means that although this mount will fit that lens that I'm recording this now on, you can't access any of the aperture in order to make it change, and so it's not really compatible. So if you do buy one of these Nikon F mounts, it is for the older D-type lenses. The G-type lenses were the more modern ones, and they were kind of more fly-by-wire, more electronics involved. But the older D-type lenses, these ones with the aperture ring built onto the lens, they'll work fine with this, either in full manual mode or in aperture priority mode. You dial down the aperture and it will work out, because it's seeing, it's reading through the lens. It will see what the aperture is and adjust the ISO and the shutter speed accordingly if you've got it set up to do so. So that's that. And of course, it's manual focus. Now, the nice thing about this is the manual focus is really, really easy. That whole ring turns. I mean, it's literally all of that bit, so it's beautifully smooth. And when this came out, it was at a time when professional photographers didn't really use autofocus. It was considered something a bit amateur, in fact. And in the days when this was around and you had cameras like the f3, f4, f5, they did have split focusing screens. Again, refer back to this video that's up in my hand, because that's where I explain a little bit more of that in detail. But those cameras were designed to have manual focus as a standard, so that's kind of what this was built for. It had an auto focus mode built in. There's a whack the microphone there, but there's a switch there that goes from manual to autofocus. The autofocus is slow at best, frankly, and is easily fooled. So yeah, it's not something that I would necessarily. I mean, I've used it in manual focus a lot on the D300 for just those reasons. So with the focus peaking that's in here, it's certainly perfectly possible to attain really, really sharp focus, and pretty quickly at that. It really is just the enormous size compared to the body of the camera that is. It's a struggle. You have to hold it by the lens. It means you can't have it dangling around your neck. To give you an idea about why that is a problem, when I'm shooting at concerts, for example, I tend to shoot with two bodies. I'll have one with, with a wider zoom on it. So I'll normally have the D50-100 that I'm talking to now, with the 17 to 50 that I'm talking to now as my wide angle option, and I'll have that slung around my round one shoulder. Then round the other shoulder, I'll have the D300 with this 80 to 200 for doing those tellies and close-up shots. And I'm switching all the time between the two. So I want to be able to hang this down by my side and get the other camera out and start using it. So I don't know. I think if it's probably held straight down, I don't know. It's a lot of weight, and I would be worried about doing that, frankly, on such a small camera body. So the search continues. I really appreciate people giving me options to have a look at. In the last video, I asked for comments about that, and there were some really good suggestions. I will certainly be checking a couple of those things out. And again, if you've got suggestions of something that I could use doesn't have to be a zoom necessarily. Zoom would be useful. I mean, you know, something around this zoom range, 70 to 200, 80 to 200 is really nice. Otherwise, you know, some fixed tellies, you know, 135, somewhere around an f2 would be really cool. To f2.8, even an f3.5 would be fine. And some people made some great suggestions actually about that last time out. So thank you very much for those. Keep those coming. Any suggestions, or if you've tried this combination yourself and you've got experience of that, let me know in the comments what you think. Otherwise, as always, please subscribe using that box there, because the more I get the subscriptions up and I can get views up, and then eventually this channel will start to sort of able to, I'm whacking that microphone again, will start to monetize itself a little bit, and that allows me to grow its scope and what it can do, and all that great stuff. So I'm sure you understand how important it is for us YouTubers to get those subscriptions up. So if you like the content, please help me out by pressing the red button on there. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.